Bless everybody. It's good to see you. I'm Mark with True North Studio, where we live the Word and we walk with power. A few weeks ago, I taught about the greatest 3 minutes of believing vision in history, and how a man who was about to die was able to maintain a perfectly clear vision of personal victory. And because of this incredible believing, this guy lived. And it was a guy named Jonah who was thrown overboard, swallowed by a fish, had his head tangled in seaweed, and now his breathing was being crushed out of him as the fish dived hundreds of feet below the surface of the Mediterranean. And amazingly, during that 3 minutes, he still had the presence of mind during those final minutes of air to pray and vividly picture himself getting out of the situation and once again walking in the sunlight on a beach. You know, he saw it, he believed it, and he lived to talk about it. Jonah took the perfect selfie. Now today we're going to spotlight two men who each spent a lifetime, not 3 minutes, but a lifetime perfecting their believing masterpieces. And one did it for his son, while the other one did it for the entire world. And seldom will anyone paint a 3-minute masterpiece as Jonah did. And only a true artist of life will work their vision for their entire lifetime. See, most of us don't sculpt a masterpiece on the first try. And Josephine and I were invited to the birthday party of one of our friend's 4-year-old grandchildren. And after she opened the many, many presents, she came up to us holding a piece of paper with some scribbling on it. And I said, you know, what does it say? And so then she dragged her little finger across his and she said, it says, "Thank you, I love you." And then said her name. And I noticed that the heart was a perfectly drawn heart, but it was just the outline. And I said, "Did you draw that heart?" And she said, "No, my dad did." And then she grabbed the piece of paper out of my finger and left for a minute or two, and then came back, and the heart was all filled in. And I said, you know, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "A heart needs to be filled with color." So I thought that was pretty good for a kid. Believing masterpiece. If you and I can find a way to sculpt an image that's so vivid, so realistic, so beautiful, so perfect that no critic can make our vision of ourselves fade, then we're going to get close. Then we're getting closer to showing the world our believing masterpiece. And here's what an author named Virginia Woolf said. She said, "A masterpiece is something said once and for all, stated, finished, so that it's there, complete in the mind, if only in the back." That's a masterpiece. It's there and nothing can take it away, like art. The greatest of the artists and the greatest of the musicians, their art still stands. You know, you're going to find your masterpiece in your body of work. And I recently enjoyed an article by a guy named Mark McGinnis called "The 7 Essential Steps to Creating Your Content Masterpiece." And in it, he mentioned the massive work and mindset it takes to become noticed as an artist, as a writer, a composer, an entrepreneur. And he used the composer Johann Sebastian Bach as an example. And allow me to summarize what this guy said. And so often we wish for that elusive, uninterrupted time to work on what we think will become our masterpiece. We think that they had it so easy back in the day when they had all that time to work on these things. Those good old days. But see, nothing can be further from the truth. McGinnis said that, and I quote, Bach spent his career as an employee composing music to order on a punishing schedule. And Bach spent several decades writing an average of 20 pages of finished music a day. Bach wrote to a weekly schedule, but with his eye on immortality. And Bach worked on each piece like it would be a timeless masterpiece. Because nobody knows what's really going to be chosen as a masterpiece. Imagine writing down 20 pages of your book every day. Your novel that you're writing. You know, what about writing a new song every day? A new song every day. This is what Bach did. 20 pages of music is a lot. You see, whatever you're passionate about, get busy doing it. Whatever you passionately need, get busy seeking it, studying it, doing something. See, Bach was a hired hand. And he produced over 1,000 musical works during his lifetime, most of which we'll never hear. And musical researchers say that his hit and miss ratio were fairly consistent with other composers of the day. There was a lot of people writing, but only the ones that made it and the ones that didn't, he was about the same as everybody else. McGinnis also said that musicologist Norman Carell has conducted a painstaking analysis of Bach's compositions and concluded that more than 200 of his nonverbal works contain borrowings from his own earlier works, and that 65% of his cantatas contain similar borrowings from his earlier choral works. So he just kept reusing what he said and did, the tunes and everything. And Bach reworked his earlier themes. And as an artist, we have to remember that not everyone's heard or remembers what we've done in the past. You think you have to be totally unique. Jesus Christ repeated himself multiple times. You know, I mean, it's the way life is. Bach also borrowed tunes and riffs from other composers, which wasn't unusual or wasn't considered plagiarism in the day. It was considered a compliment. And so, but a lot of people, they'll practice riffing off of somebody else's tunes because they learn to play guitar that way. They learn to play a violin. They play the masters, the greats, the people in music. Now, that we're all leading up to something. What I'm getting to here is it's going to take time. It takes a lot of work to build a masterpiece, just like it will to build the masterpiece within ourselves. Because once you have that, it's set. It's done. It usually doesn't happen like a selfie. And see, we may never have the time to produce our masterpiece, but we just keep plugging away every day. And when I say masterpiece, it's what's that thing you want more than anything? Do you want to get noticed as an artist? Do you want health? Do you want wealth? What is it you want? You want a better relationship? It doesn't matter what it is. You see, our masterpiece will be found within our body of work. You're already working on it. See, all art has an emotional impact. And Jesus and his band of merry men were north of Galilee in a green, well-watered and lovely area called Caesarea Philippi. And I think it's about 30, 40 miles north of where he was raised, of Galilee. And he had taken 3 of his most trusted followers up into this high mountain. And it was probably the snow-capped Mount Hermon, which provides all the water that runs through the Jordan River and into Israel. And it could be seen from where they were staying, just like we can see Pikes Peak from where we're sitting right now. And on the way back from that amazing overnight visit on what we call today the Mount of Transfiguration, the four men, Jesus, James, John, and Peter, he approached the remainder of the apostles and certain other followers, and as well as curiosity seekers. See, but Jesus smelled trouble. And have any of you business owners or parents ever gone out of town for a day or two and returned only to see that things had gone absolutely nuts? Yeah, that's what Jesus saw when he returned from the mountain. And so in Mark chapter 9, and we're going to start in verse 14, we're going to pick up this record here. Mark 9. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude round about them, and the scribes questioning with them. See, Jesus and his four most trusted men got closer to, as they got closer to the group, he could see his friends were getting cornered by these religious guys. And they wore unmistakable clothing. Every group and every sect of the leadership in Israel wore a different type of robe or hat or something. And like like students being taught to paint by the numbers, you ever seen those things? You know, these men were trained to interpret the law of Moses. And they made sure, and they thought their job was to make sure everyone else saw it exactly the way that they see it. That's religion. And, and they argued, these guys were very proud of their intellect and their schooling. And they argued biblical law like a lawyer does. And they would challenge anybody who didn't see things the way that they did. See, religious people are uncomfortable around truly free people. And because these free thinkers can't be controlled by them. And religion is all about controlling the people. And truth is all about setting people free. And that's where really every religion should lead people, to freedom. And the masterpiece within your life will also set other people free. That's where you got to find that masterpiece amidst the many pages of other stuff. You ever seen somebody cry when they saw a piece of art or heard a certain song? You know, I mean, that's, read a certain book, it made them cry. Well, that's art. It's art. Doesn't mean you have to cry, but you understand the point. Verse 15, and straightway all the people, when they beheld him, when they saw Jesus, were greatly amazed, and running to him saluted him. That doesn't mean like a military salute. Salute just means to embrace. They hugged him. So they saw Jesus and these other three guys walking up. They've been gone all night, and now they're walking up. They just have been harangued by these scribes wearing these fancy robes, questioning them why they couldn't do certain things. And then they thought, well, this is our perfect chance to get rid of these religious guys. So this one crowd, they run to go see Jesus. He couldn't have been too far away. And they all hug him and, how you doing? And then he waded through the crowd and walked right up to these religious leaders. Jesus Christ had no fear, because there is no fear in true freedom. And the people followed him. Now the crowd's moving back with him, back to where these guys are. And I think, let your light shine. You're designed to be art. You're art to this world in some way, shape, or form. All art has an emotional impact. Now go to who inspires you. Verse 16, and he asked the scribes, what question ye with them? Jesus Christ asked these scribes, what are you guys doing? What are you knuckleheads doing interrogating my guys? What are you doing? So he asked them a question. We're going to see that they don't have any time to answer this question because something else big happened. Now imagine if you had heard about the Christ and you already were afraid of these scribes because they could get you into some trouble religiously. Now Jesus Christ has done all these things for a few months. Now this man, there's a man who wades through this crowd. You know, you can see the scribes raising their skinny little fingers, you know, and maybe adjusting their little hat, you know, and they're taking a breath of air, and they're getting ready to answer Jesus with their most magnificent verbal jujitsu. And but only to be preempted by this exhausted dad. Verse 17, and one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And wherever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth, and gnasheth with his teeth, and pineth away. And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. Plato said, wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. The Bible also says, a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it until afterwards. If you have something to say it. You know, but this man had something to say. He had a question to ask. He had a need that was not getting met for maybe 11, 12, 13 years. He'd wanted an answer, but nobody could help him. The father verbalized his vision to the person he thought could help. The father of this sick boy, he spoke up. And he wasn't even the one Jesus was talking to. To interrupt a crowd like that, to interrupt the Christ, to interrupt the pointy-fingered, you know, scribes, to walk right in front and then throw your need out there, that's bold, baby. That is bold. And I think to get our need met, sometimes you got to push through the crowd. You got to push through the junk to get what you want. The father probably had told the same sad story. That wherever he taketh them, he teareth them, and he foams and he gnashes. It's probably he'd said this for years. Anybody ask him, what's wrong with your son? Well, he foams and he gnashes and he falls down and he's getting skinnier and skinnier, you know. And it was just off the top of the head, not from the depth of the heart. If you're going to help somebody, you got to get to the heart. And see, this guy told the same question over and over, but always expecting a different outcome. Sort of the definition of insanity. But you got to say this dad was bold and persistent. A fashion designer named Helmut Lang, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but he said, once I'm committed, I'm unafraid of the outcome. Once I'm committed, I'm unafraid of the outcome. And you think a designer doesn't get judged? That's all it's about. And that's an attitude you have to have if you're going to be the top of your game, if you're going to show off your masterpiece. So this father was so committed to his son's deliverance and to his own torment that he interrupted Jesus and preempted the scribes. That's boldness. He said, Jesus, I heard you're in town, and so I brought my son, hoping that one of your men could possibly heal him. But he won't talk. My son's out of control. He scratches open his skin, just keeps opening up wounds at one after another. He grinds his teeth down to a nub. There's hardly anything left. And he foams at the mouth. He's anorexic, probably just inches from death. I believe it's a devil spirit or some evil force that's driving him to hurt himself. So I came here. I heard you guys were here, and I came here to get some help. But your men didn't have the power to solve this problem. Jesus. Now, that's sort of a bold thing to say to the Christ, wouldn't you say? And he's talking openly in front of all the disciples and the apostles. And there's a huge crowd, and the scribes. And see, now Jesus is going to talk directly to the Father, but the lesson is really designed for everyone within earshot. See, the effect of the scribes disappeared as the color of love fills in the heart. Jesus goes for the heart. Go to who inspires you. Now prep your canvas. See, an artist will take the time to prep her canvas or to retune his instruments. And a writer will look for inspiration in every conversation. A teacher will look for it in everything, everywhere he goes. Most of the teachings I've put together over the years are when I was out running, jogging on the trails. And I'll see something, it'll make me think, a verse will come to mind, and I'll start rehearsing that, and it's there. And so it'll come in all different ways, but you have to look for it. People say, well, how do you have all these stories, Mark? You have the same stories. Just open your eyes, open your ears. Stuff is happening all around you all day long. See, Jesus is going to see if this man really means business, or is it just talk? If it's top of the head, it's talk. If it's depth of heart, then he has something to work with. There's a foundation. He's going to ask a few questions to help the man and to help the crowd. And Jesus is working the conversation like a master artist of human nature, of which he was and is. Verse 19, he answered him and saith, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me. And O faithless generation simply means that the community believing of those people had fallen to an all-time low. That's all it means. These people were just talking. They weren't acting. And whenever religion is not believing, religion is typically just following somebody else. You're actually living somebody else's dream, not your own. That's where you live from the heart. People are trained to lie to themselves, which makes them very good at holding back part of the truth. And if you've ever been to a counselor or you ever been a counselor, you see this. If you want answers or inspiration, you have to live full on. You have to open fully if you really want full help. You want partial deliverance? That's okay. Then just tell people partially what you want. Tell God partially what you want. See, surround yourself with people, books, music, media that inspires you and molds your future. If what you're doing, if everything you do doesn't lead you toward your deliverance, towards your goal, then it's a waste of time. Unless you just need to relax maybe sometimes. See, like Johann Sebastian Bach, if you want to write a masterpiece, then write every day. Have you heard of writer's block? Yes. Okay, all writers talk about it. Have you ever heard of talker's block? No, because we're great at talking. Right? You start talking. I just was with Josephine and her childhood friend. Oh my God. It was 5 days of talking. I mean, me and the other lady's husband, we were just scratching our heads. How do they have that much stuff to say? But once you start talking, one story builds on another story, and you try to top that story and this and that. You don't have talker's block. If a writer just keeps writing, he'll get rid of that writer's block. A musician can't figure it out. He just start playing, do something to get back your mojo. You see, do something. You want your relationship back? Then start spending more time on that relationship. Right? Health, the same thing. It works in anything. If you want to sing a hit, then make your life a song. If you want to help others find their true north, then get out there and help others all day, every day. If you want help, help others. Great lesson. Here's a quote from Lauren Tarshish, and she's a modern author of children's books. And she said, many writers are afraid of writing something bad, so they don't try, or give up when their efforts don't lead to a masterpiece right away. If you work at it, you will improve. If you work at it, you will improve. You want to improve, then work at it, whatever it is. Prepare your canvas through daily discipline. Every day, do something to improve your situation. A guy named Kermit Washington used to play for the Blazers back in the 80s or something, early 90s. He had a talk show, and I heard him when I lived in that area. And he said that the kids today want to be champions, but they don't want to work to be champions. You got to work. You want to be a champion of your own life, you got to work hard. Stay curious. Verse 20. And they brought him unto him. They brought this writhing, foaming, scab-covered, kid. And we'll find out what else he looked like in a few minutes. And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, when this kid saw Jesus, straightway the Spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming. I mean, he just threw himself on the ground, and he just back and forth, and foam spewing all over the place, mud's caking to the side of his head from that. He's not a pretty sight. He's doing this right in front of Jesus, right in front of the scribes, right in front of the apostles, the disciples, and all this big crowd. Who's the center of attention now? Yeah. And it took a few people to bring this writhing, out-of-control kid to where Jesus was. And the moment the kid saw Jesus, he jerked violently and threw himself on the ground. And this wasn't just a tizzy like one of my sisters used to do. When she didn't get her way, she'd throw herself on the ground and scream and kick her legs. That's not what this is. Okay, this is a lot worse than that. Okay? I won't tell you which one it was. And see, Jesus still needed more information in order to help this kid and help this father. He saw that the dad must have left out some key information, or this kid would have been delivered before. Remember, Jesus said, oh faithless generation. In other words, you got your believing switched off. What's going on? I'm not going to be here forever. He saw the dad left out some information. He needed a clearer picture of where the dad's believing was at. He wanted to see the picture, the masterpiece that was within that dad's soul for his son. Verse 21. And he asked his father, the kid's father, how long is it ago since this came unto him? And he said, of a child. So which means the kid was no longer a little child. He was a little bit older. Okay? So Jesus says, how long has this kid been this way? Since he's a baby. Now I can hardly imagine. I mean, my kids weren't always easy, but they weren't this way. And I think if you don't know something, what's a good thing to do? Ask a question. You see, get the information you need to solve yours or someone else's problem. Be curious. Push to get your answer. See, how many people go to counselors but never tell them what's really going on? Counselors love that because that person's going to keep coming for a long time. They're going to make thousands of dollars on that guy or girl. You see, most people don't tell they never tell the full story. They never tell enough to get the full deliverance. They go for years, sometimes their whole life, because they just won't get honest. Jesus Christ doesn't have this time. he's starting to see other people moving closer to them. And watch how Jesus skillfully brings out in the conversation what most never see or hear. And now the guy's going to add some more information, this dad. And oftentimes it hath cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. Okay. And but if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. So what's added here now? I thought of three basic things. One, suicide, which he didn't tell any, that wasn't brought out before. This kid, because everybody cooked on open fires in that day and time and warmed themselves with open fires. Imagine being a dad to have a kid that would dive into fires. What would that kid look like? You ever seen people that are burnt all over? Just go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, see their arms, I mean, it's not a pretty sight, a burn victim. This kid was. And the water, it was all water there in Caesarea Philippi. This is a snow-capped mountain. It was all streams and rivulets coming down, feeding the Jordan River, which fed a lake before the Sea of Galilee, which goes on down into the Red Sea. It's so much of the water from that area started right there. There's water everywhere. So there's fires everywhere. There's water everywhere. This dad had his hands full. See, this father adds a necessary information, and the words if are in there, if thou canst do anything, and then he said, have compassion on us. So it's suicide, if, and us. Those are the three additions that he threw in there, which make all the difference in the world. See, and so he gives Jesus a more complete visual or verbal visual than the apostles probably asked for. And I like how the father knew he needed help too. If you ever know anybody who took care of a severely handicapped person, they need help too. But he challenged Jesus with the words if. Now he's challenging the Son of God. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. This week I was asked by a friend of mine who is very religious, and she works in the medical profession, and she asked me why a certain person wouldn't divulge to her the complete story of her recent activities. After all, they're all over Facebook. But why won't she come and talk to me? And I looked at her, I said, because she doesn't want to be judged by you. Then the woman didn't ask me any more questions. I find it amazing that the religious scribes were keeping their mouths shut. But I'll bet they were enjoying this tit for tat kind of thing. This other guy, he's challenging Jesus now. He's forcing his hand, so to speak. And it must have been fun watching Jesus in action. And these two were men of words. And they loved that turn of phrase. They loved the redirection of thought that happens in a nice conversation. They knew that one word, like a well-placed brushstroke, can change the entire picture. One well-played chord can change a song. Verse 21, to 23, we're going to read from the Message. And he asked the boy's father, how long has this been going on? Well, ever since he's a little boy. Many times it pitches him into the fire or the river to do away with him. But if you can do anything, do it. Have a heart and help us. And Jesus answered, if, there's no ifs among believers. Anything can happen. There's no ifs among believers. It's not if God can do something. It's not if you can get healthy or wealthy or wise or what have you. It's not if. It's do we believe? Or are we putting in the work to believe? The King James Version says, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. If you can believe, all things are possible. How much is all things? Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. If you can be, like I've said many times, I've had people say, well, I have an incurable disease. This will never get, no one's ever been healed of this. And I said, well, are you dead? And they'll go, what do you mean, am I dead? I'm talking to you. Well, if God can raise somebody, you can't be sicker than dead, right? And if God can raise somebody from the dead, you can be healed of whatever you have. I'm thinking, what a lesson. Moments before, the man asked Jesus if he could picture himself having the energy and the compassion to help his vexed child. And Jesus asked this man, this dad, do you see it? Can you see clearly enough the picture of your son delivered? And that's the essence of believing. Do you really see it? Is it just there? Like Virginia Woolf said. See, believing is our inner masterpiece. It's dusting off one of the many paintings that we've worked on our whole life. Believing is the completed painting of what you expect to see. But it's all inside. Our self-talk is the paintbrushes. You're the artist of your own life. You're the artist of your own heart. Verse 24, and straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. I don't know what it's like to have a child that's suicidal, throws himself into fires, it just looks horrendous, and is so skinny, looks like he's from Auschwitz. Wouldn't eat. See, this dad had to watch out for this kid 24 hours a day. You have to watch out for you 24 hours a day. Nobody can believe for you like you can believe for you. It's like a child, but a child needs to be taken care of by a parent. You see, do you think that would wear you out, having to deal with a kid like that? It'd be your whole life. It would be everything. And this father wanted help. And if we want to help ourselves or help others, we have to keep asking questions. We have to stay curious. Now, you are a masterpiece. And Jesus read the script of the man's masterpiece, and he found one little flaw. He saw a couple of things that were left out. 3 things, basically. And Jesus reminded him to retrieve from his heart a misplaced masterpiece that he once had of his son. Because this guy had this. He wanted his son to be delivered. He could see it, but he didn't know how to get to that next step. And he pulled back out the beautiful picture that he had buried long ago deep within his heart. Sort of like you've been in an artist's house and they have all their paintings just stacked in rows, and maybe they can pull out the one that you want to see, and maybe they can't because it's been there for so long. See, a vision of what he dreamed of his child becoming and having, this Jesus wanted to make sure this man still had this thing. And I ask you, can you see yourself delivered? Can you see yourself healed? Can you see yourself prospering? If you can't, then you won't. See, this dad must have been amazing to have sculpted a mental picture of something he'd never seen. He'd never seen this child whole and normal. But in his heart and mind, he still could see his son acting like a normal child. Isn't that believing? Yeah. You know, he clearly saw his son whole. The Father's love was his masterpiece. Now, you know, pull back out that that beautiful picture that you once proudly displayed of yourself to yourself. We all have it. It's there somewhere. Who you really wanted to be, what you really wanted to do, how you picture yourself when you're at your very best. Pull that picture back up and look at that a time or two. You see, you've worked on your self-portrait your entire life. The cool thing about art and love is that you can improve on both. And my grandma was a painter, and she'd have a painting up sometimes for years. And you see her every once in a while pick up a brush and mix some paint, and she'd put a brush to the canvas, and she'd put it down, and it'd be there for another year, gathering dust. And then she had 5 or 6 other ones that she'd work on at the same time. And she painted a little bit here and a little bit there. And, you know, when she died, she had hundreds of paintings leaning against the wall, just one against another, just gathering dust on the floor of her studio. And so because she loved painting, she kept painting. Now, some of these paintings were better than others. Some I didn't like, some I liked. And but I was thinking how we don't cater to our critics. And this is important, because look who was there to criticize Jesus Christ and this Father. Probably he'd already gone through this scenario with the disciples that were left behind. There was 8 apostles that were still there. Or 9. You see, how clearly do you see your deliverance? Do you work every day on improving your self-image? Do you work every day on your art, whatever that is? The art of your heart. Verse 25, and when Jesus saw the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He's dead! See, when Jesus saw even more people beginning to run up so they could see what was happening, these gawkers, they were just there for the freak show, he knew the temperature of believing would change if he didn't act quickly. It's impossible to please your critics. I remember when Josephine's mother was at our house one Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden, and we're all eating, they're watching TV or something in a room or a parade or something, and she just slumped in her chair and stopped breathing. And then the people in the room started screaming. And so I was in the kitchen or something, so I came running in there to see what was going on, and I saw the mom slumped in the chair, so I picked her up and I carried her back into another room. And then I prayed for her, and then she went, she started breathing again, and she goes, Where am I, and how did I get in this room? And now whether she was dead or not, I don't know. But see, I had to get her out of that room. I would never have been able to do that in a room where people are screaming and freaking out. Sometimes you just you got to get away from people who are going to bring you down. And because it's impossible to please the critics. And see, Jesus knew that the dad's internal picture of that kid was visible in that man's heart now. And Jesus evicted that spirit like a squatter. And the child flipped wildly on the ground, and then he just lay there motionless. And a bunch of people said out loud, He's dead! You killed him, Jesus! You know, I mean, so now the crowd's getting bigger, and I'm sure that the scribes just had a little smirk on their face at this point. You know, going, I'm going to see what's going to happen now, because that kid was not moving. He looked like he was dead. And they were. You think some people there were hoping that Jesus would fail? Oh yeah. What had to go through his mind? This wasn't a pretty sight. This wasn't a good-looking child. It was sad to see this kid, just skinny as a little blade of grass, beat up to hell with foam and mud caked all over him. Not pretty. But this kid was beautiful to the dad. He was beautiful to the dad. 27. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. He grabbed that little tiny hand and picked up that little wisp of a kid. And the kid stood up. In his right mind. Now look at the multiple layers of believing action required just to help the dad remember his internal masterpiece for his boy. What's it going to take for you to remember your internal masterpiece? Our life is a canvas covered with layers and colorful strokes. And it starts with our internal selfie. Every thought, every word, everything that happens outside our head goes inside our head. And it makes a difference on our outcome or the outcome of what we want. Don't cater to your critics. It's a big lesson. Now, don't monkey around with your selfie. And this week I read about a nature photographer named David Slater. And he did some work in Indonesia. And he was photographing the ever mischievous macaque monkeys. And during a shoot, a group of the monkeys, they sort of surrounded him and started jumping all over his equipment. And they grabbed one of his cameras and started hitting the shutter button. And they took hundreds of pictures. And one female monkey took an astonishingly great selfie that went viral on the web. And she had a toothy grin and wide eyes. And here's the picture. And this is a selfie that this monkey took of herself. I love the teeth. Eyes are open, it's like... Mr. Slater wanted to profit from the image, and he spoke with a copyright attorney because this thing went viral. Everybody was using this picture. And he didn't like it because it came from his camera. But he was told that whoever presses the shutter button owns the image, even if it's not your camera. If you took a picture of somebody at a fair, and then a great celebrity walked by, and they sold that picture to the Enquirer, you could sue them because it's your picture. Isn't that crazy? It's your picture. It's your image. Whoever you allow to press your buttons owns you. Verse 28. And when he was come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could we not cast him out? Why couldn't we cast him out, Jesus? My God, we've done this before. Why not now? What's different? See, this time it's because they only saw part of the picture. They only caught a glimpse of the believing foundation of that Father. They failed to grasp the great momentum and the great tsunami of group unbelief. They didn't understand the if and the us. And they probably were even getting their buttons pushed by the scribes, which took them off their game. See, what other people say does affect our believing. Choose your friends well. And be careful who you let push your buttons. A guy named Maxwell Maltz said, self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. Your selfie, your internal selfie is exactly who you are. And remember, don't let anyone monkey around with your selfie. Okay? And so now keep making your art. And like I've said once before, I once had a professional portrait taken for social media, and when I got back the image, the picture looked exactly like me, only better. Only better. And I was thinking that's how our life should be. With the picture we should have of ourselves should be exactly, it should look exactly like us, only better. If you want your life to be better, you have to take a step out of where you are, right? It has to be better. And verse 29, and he said unto them, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. And I was thinking that's the answer to a self-masterpiece. We keep painting, we keep composing, we keep sculpting, we keep working on ourselves and help as many others along the way as we possibly can. We become a gift to the world. See, the answer to our hardest problems is prayer and fasting. But what does that mean? Simply put, prayer and fasting is a lifestyle of giving our problems to God and using our strengths to help others who are less fortunate. It's giving your all to help somebody else. And that's what Jesus Christ did. And so day after day, we touch up our self-portrait by asking God to help us where we're weak, and we help others with their weakness. See, if a monkey can take a picture that goes viral, why did it take Bach so much hard work, tireless work, to produce a few pieces of art? He wrote over 1,000 songs, 20 pages a day to produce a very few musical masterpieces. But we still enjoy them today. So was it worth it? Sure. Sure. Like love, true art will stand the test of time and last long after we're gone. Let's put in the work each and every day to improve our situation and help as many others along the way as we can, and we too will uncover our believing masterpiece. God bless.